Mark Eastwood.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say congratulations to the member for West Bromwich West on his very articulate speech and not using notes as well, which I'll try and replicate in today's contribution. I'd also like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Barrow and Furness for introducing this bill. Before coming here today on the train and obviously looking at the bills that were being put forward today, it occurred to me that actually this bill, and we've used the word simple, but I think the Honourable Member for Southend West actually mentioned unintended consequences. And actually the bill that's being put forward today might seem simple in essence, but to me it was very surprising, and who knew that actually on a Friday, if you were to release a prisoner, that would be have an unintended consequence, which is that would lead them to have a greater chance of reoffending, and that's been a very surprising looking at the actual bill itself, and I fully support the bill that's being put forward, and I hope the government and the minister put this through. One of the things that the Honourable Member for West Bromwich West touched upon, which resonated with me actually on a personal level, although I have to say I'm not personally reoffending or have reoffended, but actually growing up in quite a deprived area of Batley and Dewsbury as I was growing up, and I had a friend, and this does relate actually to the bill, and a friend of mine who was growing up, and we went two separate ways. We grew up from an early age, and as teenagers he actually committed quite a serious crime as a late teenager, and unfortunately that led to being imprisoned, and we went our separate ways. And you know, he spent quite a number of years in prison, but came out and actually changed his life around. And you know, West Bromwich West member mentions about getting a second chance, and he did come out and give himself a second chance, and he turned his life around. But what astonishes me is that if he'd actually been released on a Friday, potentially that might not have happened. And I think that is obviously a very important point about this bill. And now he's actually turned his life around. He's a member of the same gym as me, which is a muscle pit in Dewsbury. And there's a few gym members here in Milton Keynes North and West Bromwich West that often attend the gym. So the muscle pit, which is obviously a contradiction in terms as far as I'm concerned. But ultimately, we need to give offenders all the chances that we can. And if there's a certain day of the week that doesn't actually help, then that is a problem. And I think this problem is being addressed very well today. And again, I would like to pay tribute to the member for Barrow and Furness. I mean, obviously there are a number of statistics that surround reoffending, and the member for West Bromwich West alluded to the fact that not everybody's going to stop reoffending because we've moved it out of a Friday and maybe go to a Monday. But ultimately, anything that can help the statistics, and when you look at those statistics, you look at that those released from prison have the resources, you know, that they have the resources available to support them to reduce the risk of reoffending. The Ministry of Justice data highlighted by Switchback, who I know my honourable member, honourable friend for Barrow has been dealing with this award-winning resettlement charity in London, shows that over 50,000 people released from prison every year, and of those 40% are reconvicted, which is 20,000, which is far too many. Just 1 in 10 gain work, which is 5,000. And then what happens to the other 25,000 as well? And reoffending costs society and the taxpayer an estimated £18 billion a year. So Switchback found that in London, and that 2 in 3 were released homeless. Okay, 1 in 4 had no idea.
On that point, would you mind giving way?
Give way.
I wonder whether he's aware of the comments of Lord Bird in relation to his support for this bill, in that the link between prison and homelessness is so critical, and that this bill, in his words, is a step towards breaking that link.
Like the honourable member for Milton Keynes North there, I'm not aware of those specific comments, but what I would say is obviously we don't want people sleeping on the streets, we don't want rough sleepers, I'd actually like to pay tribute to Kirklees Council and their rough sleeping team. But if this alleviates that problem, then I think that is to the benefit of this bill, and actually it needs to be put forward. So I'd like to thank him for that. Okay, so, and then 1 in 4 had no idea or no bank account or phone. So they're actually out of the system. Bina, I know we've mentioned another charity, NACRO. They're campaigning this matter since 2018 and has also called for an end to Friday releases. They suggest that more than a third of prison leavers are released on a Friday, which piles pressure onto offender managers, responsible officers, local housing authorities, accommodation providers, job centre plus officers and other community services. But I would suggest it has a wider impact than just the public sector and those that are offering these services. There are a number of charities that also want to help with the offenders, and I'd just like to give them, within this framework of this bill, to give them a name check. So we've got the Blast Foundation, who equip offenders and ex-offenders and their families to prepare for reintegration into lawful society through mentoring and training. We have Choices, a counselling service for those facing unplanned pregnancy and child separation. HTB Shelter and Night Shelter, moving on from the member for Milton Keynes North, provide a safe place for rough sleepers in London. Mind provides advice and support to empower anyone experiencing a mental health problem. 1 in 4 supports people who have experienced child sexual abuse and trauma. Prison Fellowship works through its volunteer members to support prisons in a number of ways. Again, these prisoners and offenders who come back into society need to have access to these, but if they can't do that on a weekend, then of course they're more likely to be stood at the prison gates, being tempted by the drug dealers and people who are maybe wanting them not to actually rehabilitate themselves, because obviously from a financial point of view it doesn't help them, does it? So, and I think one final organisation which I have much admiration for when it comes to prisoners and rehabilitation is Timpson's. And Timpson's are the Timpson's do the dry cleaning. They do my dry cleaning, although I think my suit probably needs to go back next week. I'll bring another suit in next week, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you'll be pleased to know. And Timpson's do great work with reoffenders, and actually, you know, they've been known to meet offenders at the gates. But they won't do that potentially on a Friday, but they obviously operate on a 6-day-a-week basis. But you know, they are there to help with the reoffenders. To stop reoffending with people who've been,
He's my honourable friend. He's making a characteristically articulate speech, and I just wanted to say well done to him for that, because it is fantastic. Just on that point though, he's mentioned a number of charities and third-party organisations there. Does he not agree with me that one of the good things about this, as I touched on in my contribution around sort of the practical use of this discretion, is that it enables a bit of forward planning as well? So if we can then enable some further engagement with these organisations, we can actually plan a proper release strategy for prisoners to at least try and mitigate some of the stuff he's talking about in exactly the way he's just articulated there.
Absolutely. It means all these organisations are fully prepared for helping people to reintegrate into society. And I suppose the final point on Timpson's, you know, I've been talking to people who work in their high street shops. They do great work in that. The only thing that they don't train people in on is key cutting, for obvious reasons. So, I think Fridays, we've mentioned, are also busy days in prison, which often results in delayed release. Higher volume of prison leavers, prioritise that go to court over those due of release, leads to later release. Less time to present support services, which we already mentioned, can lead to homelessness, especially impacts on women and young people. Women are held, on average, 63 miles from home, with many held 100 miles or more. 11% of children in custody are held over 100 miles from home, with 35% held more than 50 miles away. Services in the community can have reduced service on Fridays and reduced or no service over the weekend. This means the window for prison leavers to obtain support from these services is incredibly limited on a Friday, and delays can mean that these people can access the support they need. And obviously this leads again on to the increased risk of reoffending and sets them up to fail. And as the member for West Bromwich West alluded to earlier, everybody should give them a second chance. And we don't want people to fail. We don't want people to go back into the prison system. So the higher number of releases on Friday puts unnecessary pressure on services, especially on bank holidays as well. We're not mentioning bank holidays. You know, if you've got Friday release and actually Monday is a bank holiday, or in certain cases, if we have a special occasion, a Tuesday, that leaves the prisoners, again, left to their own devices and at risk. And I think that's something that also needs to be taken into account with this bill. So, in conclusion, I think we need to support this bill to help those who genuinely want to re-engage with society, to ensure that they are able to access the support available, to reduce the risk of reoffending due to a lack of support, and therefore reduce the pressures on criminal justice services that they can adequately support more people. And again, I would just like to say, as a final point, again, congratulations to the Honourable Member for Barrow and Furness on presenting this bill. He has my full support.